So I've got a Hulk, new filming system here. I'm using my iPhone. See how that works. So I just don't want to turn it on. I'm kind of paranoid about turning on Gottlieb System 1s without System 1s and System 80s without kind of seeing what's going on first. Here's the back box. Looks pretty original. Original battery, which is just starting to corrode a little. I don't know if you can see it, but right here we got some corrosion. Notice one thing with this iPhone, it doesn't steady cam as well as my normal. Power supplies, original filter cap, that's got to go. No ground mods performed, and wow, this is going to be a problem. This is the coin door. This connector here is for the playfield. This is for the coin door. Obviously, there was a connector issue. I'm not quite sure how we're going to handle this, but we're not going to be able to coin it up, obviously, if the coin door is not connected. Also, the slam switch, the normally closed slam switch. We'll have to do the mod if we want to get around not having the slam switch, which is on the coin door, work. So we've got a little bit cut out for us. We can kind of look at these. I can just tell by how these fell off. This connector, it's so loose that it's corroded. I can feel, look at it, it's just like pulling right off. And you can see the pins are just wasted. Wasted really bad on that one. And that's probably why they did this. Oh, this one pulls off too easy too. This connector's wasted. I can see it too. Again, the pins, it just pulls off way too easy. Look at that. Oh man. It's like sliding all over the place. Compared to say this one that I got to wrestle to get off. So if the CPU board even boots, that would be the next question. We've got some corrosion to deal with. Let's check the power supply. I removed this top connector here. This guy is off. And the game is on. I have my ground lead right there. And up here you can see how the board is nicely labeled. If we go to the far right, that's our -12, which we have as -12. And then to the far right, we have +5, which we have as +5. So the voltages are good as far as the CPU is concerned. We can also test these guys. I got to use a different ground though. I don't think I'm going to get anything off here. The ground for the voltages, it likes to be right here. And then we can check these guys and see what we got. And there we got our 60 volts for the score displays. That's good for the big display. And then 40 volts for the little display. So what I've done is I've hooked up the connector from the power supply to CPU board. I have the driver board connector removed, and of course I have these two, the playfield switch matrix and the coin door switch matrix plugs disconnected. The displays are hooked up because I want to see what's going on, and I powered it on. And I have wire brushed the corrosion off the board and roughed up the edge connector pins using my wire brush too. So I've turned it on and I immediately get this. You can see how the display is sort of flickering, but I've got all displays working, even this one, which is very dim, but it is working. And what you're seeing is the game in slam tilt. It'll come up in this immediately. Normally you get the 5-second delay, but with the slam tilt issue, it'll come on immediately. Watch. On, and look, it's doing that immediately. That's just to tell you that the game is slam tilted, and the reason why the game is slam tilted is because this connector here, which goes to the coin door and has the slam tilt switch on it, is not working. So what we're going to do, since the CPU board is working, I will do the slam mod modification. It's just a little jumper I have to do up here so that we don't need the coin door slam tilt, and we can actually see the game come up. But that doesn't really solve a lot of our problems. We still have connector problems, so we're going to have to rebuild certainly this connector, and I'm going to have to figure out something for the coin door so the guy can credit this thing up. That connector is pretty wasted. The fingers are gone on the board, but I'm sure I can come up something that all he's got to do is be able to really credit it, and maybe run diagnostics would be off this connector. Here's the CPU board removed from the game, and you can see this is why they soldered the wires. Look at all that corrosion across that connector, and even this one. I took the battery off, but you can see there's a fair amount of corrosion here too. So, you know, I'll see if I can get the board running, but it doesn't look good. To neutralize the battery corrosion, which is actually a strong base, I need a little acid, and something that everybody always has is some French's classic yellow mustard, which is mostly vinegar. So I spread a little bit of this around. It's really controllable because it's mustard, and I sanded it first and put a little mustard on it, and then I'll wipe it off with a damp rag to get that off, and that should help neutralize this. And then if I really want to go the extra mile, I'll take a little clear nail polish and clear coat that area. So I've taken my clear nail polish and brushed it on my sanded and mustard areas. That'll seal out the air and stop it from re-corroding. Now I'll have to do the same thing on the back of the board where there's some corrosion. There's actually quite a bit on this side. Same thing on this side. I've wire brushed the connector fingers and then sanded them. And now I've put my French's mustard on for a moment, and I'll wipe it off with a moist rag. On this side of the board, I can only use nail polish from my tip of my finger up, because these have to have connectivity between the connector pins. So what do? The corrosion is going to come back. I don't care if you use the mustard trick or not. It's going to come back if it's left unprotected. So what I did is I took my soldering iron, heated up each pin, and put a dab of solder across it, kind of sloppily. Then I would heat it up again and take a rag, and then while it's hot, wipe it off. And what this does is it leaves like a solder coating over the copper. This solder coating will prevent the corrosion from coming back. So anywhere there's not solder, here on up, I use my fingernail polish. Here down, where I need connectivity, I got to use my solder iron trick to make this work. And you can see, if I can get the focus a little bit there, that we now have all our pins working except for one right here on the coin door connector. That one blew off. That one was because of corrosion. That one's gone. We might not need that line. It's going to be a switch matrix strobe or return line, but we'll just have to see if we need that or not. There's some other tricks we can do. We can run a piece of foil across it, or I've even taken stranded wire going across it. There's a bunch of tricks you can do. I should probably do that. Oh, and then the other thing we had to do was on this side, the C2 cap right here. There's two caps, one on the left, one on the right, with a resistor between them. I know it's hard to see, but what I've done is I've taken a piece of wire and I've shorted the cap, both leads of the cap, and just ran a jumper wire across the cap. So the cap basically does nothing. Path of least resistance is going to go across the wire. That is the slam mod modification on this board, so that we don't need to have the slam mod or the slam switch working on the coin door. We're ready to test the board. I've done the connector mods. Just because I did all this sanding and that doesn't mean the board's still going to work. It's always a mystery. Notice I don't have any connectors on across the bottom, only the display connectors over there and the power connector over here. Now when we turn this on, if the slam tilt has been fixed, there should be a 5-second delay, and then the score display should come on. Let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there we go. Game is now officially in attract mode. And our high scores are scrambled because we don't have a battery. Those will be your typical high score when you don't have a battery to keep the memory alive. That's pretty common to see a score like that on a System 1 or a System 80 if there's no battery. So, what do we got left to do? We have a seemingly working CPU board. What's left is we have to repin connectors, which we would have had to do even if we replaced this board. We really saved a $200 board, but we still, even with a brand new board, I'd still have to repin this connector, and I still have to repin this connector or buy a new harness, which we will do right now, and we have to do the ground mods. And then we can see if the game actually works. Like we have CPU control lights and the coils and everything, because remember, when we have the driver board disconnected with this, there's no power going to the driver board, meaning that none of the lights are going to work, none of the coils are going to work. But we take this a step at a time. Power supply first, CPU board second, hook up the driver board third. Up to now, I've spent about an hour on the game. I've done the ground mods. By the way, I put a new cap right here, new filter cap on the power supply. On the negative lead, I ran it over to here. That's the ground mod for the power supply. CPU board, the top electrolytic, the negative lead, you run over, again, run a solid ground. Driver board, same thing. There's a cap right over here, negative lead, which is the bottom one, run that to here. The reason why you do these ground mods is because the connectors are such issues on this game. You don't want floating grounds that aren't really zero. But anyways, up to now I spent about an hour monkeying around with the game and getting it, quote, working. But now this is where time really becomes a problem, and that's the connectors. I'm using one of these Molex release tools, and you kind of got to jam it into these pins that are corroded and try and yank them out. It's difficult to get them out and then repin them, and the new ones slide right back in. But you've got to reuse this housing. I don't have any extras of these housings, so this is where the time-consuming process is. I'll have to redo this connector and, of course, the top side of this connector. This is what's going to take all the time. I've done the 3 pins on the right. Look how shiny they are and how they kind of point up, and how the other green ones are all either broken or laying flat. That's why the connector was nearly falling off the board. The edge connector board is because of these pins are just so compromised. So I have this connector done. It took me about 45 minutes, but I got it all repinned. And it's connected and the game is booted. As in, you can see the score display's on. I'm going to turn off this light up here so that the score displays are a little brighter. Now we're going to do a trick. And that is, we're going to do a switch test with actually not having the game in switch test. And what you'll see is when I hit a switch, watch the display, it'll flicker just ever so gently. Now watch, I'm going to hit this top rollover switch, watch the display. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it. The display flickers. So that one is working, this one is causing the flicker, but when I get to this one, nothing. Get to this one, nothing. And these use the same, I think the same switch column, these two switches. So a lot of these other ones are working, like here's the spinner. Spinner causes the flicker. Drop target flicker, 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 flicker. So all the drop targets are causing that. Stand-up targets causing the flicker. This stand-up target's causing it. This kicker thing, this switch, let's see. Yep, that's causing it. Let's try the other one. The other one's causing it. That's good. How about these rollovers here? These rollovers aren't causing it. None of these 4 rollovers are having any reaction. I'm not getting any flicker there. But the one switch that I really need to work, there's a 10-point switch. That one's causing the flicker. You can see it. See it flicker? You can see it. The one that's really causing me a problem is the out hole. But the out hole's a separate switch. But I'm not getting a flicker for that. That's a good question if the out hole causes that or not. I'm not entirely sure, because I'm not getting a flicker on the out hole. So that might be a problem. Because if the out hole switch doesn't register, the game isn't going to, I mean, when you drain the ball, it's not going to work. Again, that's a special switch, though, so I'm not sure if we get the flicker on that one. We'll have to research that. But and here's a spinner. Spinner definitely gives me the flicker. See it? See all that little flicker on the spinner? Yeah, you can see it good there. That's the spinner right here. I'm just wheeling it, and you can see all that. Okay, so we're getting close though. We're getting somewhere. I think I've got a switch column or a drive or something that I got to look at right there, and that may be a broken trace. Even though I've got it all connected, there may be in fact a broken trace across here. We got to take a look. So one of those switch lines went to this chip here, which I've removed. Look at all the corrosion underneath it. So no wonder that switch line didn't work. I have to straighten that out and socket it. The chip appears to be okay, but the corrosion underneath it just, yeah, that caused some problems. So I removed these 3 chips, dealt with the corrosion, put my fingernail polish clear coat on it, put sockets in, test the chips using my chip tester. This is an 05, an 04, and an 05. 7405, 7404, 7405. All tested good. The chips tested good. So I put them back in, booted up. You can see we're on. Let me turn off my overhead light here. Okay, so now I'm going to use these rollovers before over here that were not working. See, now they're flickering. Now they're causing the display to register. So these switches are now working. So it was just the battery corrosion on there. After much connector ado, I repinned this entire connector. I should have just put a new one in, bought one of those docent ones, but I didn't have to have one, and I had the pin, so I redid it. See, I put in a remote battery holder. Always check the 5101, the last pin, the upper right, to make sure you got battery voltage there, just to, you know, make sure. But the big thing is, what did I do about this connector here, the A1J6? Yeah, that one, I didn't have a housing, so I had to make something. I hate doing that, but I really didn't have any choice. So what I did is took 0.156 inch mil header pin here with individual pins, and then I use an IDC. It doesn't matter, but it could have been any 0.156 Molex, just so that I got something that I could take the board out. It kind of sucks because if the guy wanted to put an Alltech in there, he couldn't because his wiring harness has this style connector on. But since I didn't have an edge connector, really wasn't much choice. So anyways, I've got the game up and running, and you'll notice now that that display is working. I had to regas that one. I can show you how to do that in a second. Like for instance, that one over there is a little dim. Maybe we'll redo that one. So the way we're going to regas this display is, first I remove the display from the game. Obviously turn the game off. Don't take these connectors on and off with the game on. You'll wreck the CPU board if you do. Just a warning. But I've got an alligator clip hooked up to the far right pin and another one hooked up to the far left pin. Basically the two outside pins. Then I run one end to ground. One of the leads goes to ground, and the other one goes to the coil voltage, which I get down here at the coin lockout on the bandit diode lug. That's 28 volts. So we're going to turn this on just for a couple seconds and then turn it off. You'll see the wires glow bright, and what you're doing is you're basically baking all the old oxidation off the wires. Let's do it just for a second. 1, 2, 3. That's all you got to do it for. Just 3, maybe 4 seconds. 5, God, would be at the most. Then we'll put it back in the game and check it out and see how much brighter it is. I've got this display now regas. You can see how much brighter it is. See how that one I have not done. That one I have. I've actually done that one and that one. And you can see how they're brighter than the other two. Here, let me turn this light off. It might make it even a little more obvious. It actually makes it a little less obvious. But you see now, really, I probably got to do this one. So that's a great way to wake up a display. This one didn't work at all. And I did it for like 4 seconds on the coil voltage, and magically now it's the brightest one out of all of them. Another interesting little tidbit on the Hulk is that they didn't have enough driver transistors, so you've got an under the playfield, 2 under the playfield mounted transistors that are driven by one of the lamp drivers, so that for the 2 side kickers. Kind of an interesting little fact on this game. Now with everything up and running, I can start a game. See, we got a ball to shooter lane. Amazingly, I didn't have to do any driver board work to this game. It basically did everything it needed to do. And you know, it's not the most fun game in the world, but it is a game, and it does work well, including all the crazy drop targets you can knock down. There's a whole bunch of drop targets down there, and I think it increases your spot multiplier up to 5x there when you knock them all down. But good game. I mean, good working game. So, what the heck? There you go, the Hulk. What a pain in the butt, but it's done.